Oh, we are live. Look at that. That's much faster. These folks have it going on. Hi, everybody. It's the pre-show. It is our SY0-501 Security Plus Study Group pre-show. We'll be getting started in just under 10 minutes now. Thank you for being here. Hi, chat room. Let's see if I can see you on the screen. We'll move some things around. Let's, where's the other? There it is. We'll put you over there. Now we can see you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We've got all security plus Q&A in this first hour. We'll start at the top of the hour. And then I'll ask you questions in that first hour. And in the second hour, we'll open up the phone lines. And you can ask me questions about anything. Well, not anything. Almost anything. Usually it's questions about certifications or IT or something relating to that. But there's really no specific subject. You can really talk about whatever you'd like. So that's good. You've not missed anything, Moose 185. You've not missed questions. You've not missed answers. We're just getting started. We're just turning this thing up. Just getting things going. Just trying to figure out where I am. Okay, so we've got, things have changed a little bit with my layout. I now have my video switcher up here, so you can kind of see me. There I am. You see me without seeing me yet. This is what you see on this side. That's what I plan to show you next. I'll hit the button. And those are all my cameras set up with other content on them. So that's all good in the neighborhood. Okay, that all looks pretty good. The link to the quiz, we'll talk about all that in a moment, but you can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to see the question. So we'll do all of that in a moment. So Alexander says he watched my videos and passed in June. Congratulations. That's fantastic. Always good to hear when there's a successful certification. Always like getting those stories. Let's see what else we got going on. How long should I give myself to learn everything before scheduling the test? I guess it depends on your past experience and how quickly you can learn things. I would say the average for most people is probably 2 to 3 months, although people like me can take 6 months or longer just because we don't have a lot of time to study and it takes us longer to get things in our brain or whatever it happens to be. So it really depends. You go through the exam objectives, you start checking off the things you know. And when you've checked off all of the exam objectives, that's when you're ready to take the exam. So however long that takes, that's how long it should be. So that's how it works. It's not like, well, you studied a week, it's time to take the exam. Well, you studied a month, it's time to take the exam. It doesn't work that way. So you want to know everything listed in the exam objectives, then you can take the exam. That's the important part. Is there a live group like this for the A+ certification? There is, in fact, 2 of them. If you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you can, of course, do that. Is there a way to purchase my study materials paying with a check? Or do you have to use credit card only? I take credit card. I take PayPal. I take Bitcoin. I take Bitcoin Cash. So there's 4 different types of methods of payment that you could use for all of those. And I don't take checks. That's the only thing I do not take is a check. It just, I used to, and it just never really worked out very well for anybody. Just was not a good plan to do that. I've considered doing other methods as well. It's a balancing act. The business side of things, it's difficult to implement a lot of different payment options. It gets to be more confusing. Plus, some of them are not so great, like checks. Just don't work out very well online, as it turns out. My apologies for that, but that's just seems to be how it works. But if you have a checking account, you can probably figure out a way to get Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash and pay with one of those. Bitcoin Cash probably a little bit less expensive to do that on a transaction by transaction basis. So there you go. You can still gain CEU credits for watching. You'll gain 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. I'll talk about that sometime in the first hour. So listen up in that first hour so you'll figure that out. The name of the website where you submit your questions and answers, professormesser.com/QA. professormesser.com/QA. That'd be good. So Mike says you watched through 2015, 16, going back a ways. You got A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. Last week promoted to a system administrator role. Congratulations. That is fantastic. Oh, and it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of the fun. I think sysadmin roles are tons of fun. So our network, I really liked my network administrator role. That was really a lot of fun. And then it just sort of took off from there. It sort of went desktop administration, server administration, network administration, and then went into security. And it just sort of rocket shipped after that. That was my path. Doesn't have to be your path, but it could be, that was my path anyway. I got to pause my camera up here that's showing me doing things seconds in the past. So we'll figure out those pieces as well. Figure out all of those. See if my keyboard's working. Hey, it is. There we go. Now we know. We got a few minutes left to go. What are we at? 4 minutes. 4 minutes to go, and we'll get things started. This is not the study group. For those of you new who are looking at the back of my head and wondering, this is the worst study group ever, because we haven't done anything yet. You'll see this eventually. You'll see me in the front. So this is not the actual study group. There will be actual studying going on, and we'll be doing it. Right now, we're just sort of chatting to the chat room, talking to the chat room. You're typing to me, I'm talking to you. It's kind of how it works. So I do this so I can make sure my recordings are going, and they are. You see my Cylons down here on the bottom right. They're going back and forth. Those are my video recorders. I used to have a view here that was my streaming app. It's in the other room still, but it just doesn't have a monitor up for that. I got rid of my big screen that was up high, and I moved it over here. I'm trying to get things more consolidated right here in this area. So we're seeing how that works. Plus, it frees up some room behind the desk, which you can't really see. It seems like it's just darkness out there, but there's an actual room behind the desk. There's just these lights are bright here, so you just don't see that. We really should do some type of tour of the studio at some point. So thanks for joining, everybody. There's Southern California, and Ohio, and Texas, Houston. You've got folks in the Caribbean are here. Welcome. We've got a lot to go through. All Security Plus. Will this be our last 501 study group? It might be. We'll have to see next month. Can you port my calendar into Outlook? Well, I do have a Google Calendar on my site at professormesser.com/calendar. If you can find a way to integrate Google Calendar into your Outlook, that'd be a good way to do it. Italy's checking in. Hey, Kansas. Hey, Brazil. Hey, Florida. Florida folks checking in. Chicago. How you doing? Ohio, Virginia, Maryland. Tucson, welcome. Brooklyn. Kansas is here. Maryland. My Maryland is here. Hey, Zimbabwe. Thanks for joining. Tulsa, Rome, Italy. Ciao. We've got Bulgaria, Pennsylvania, Birmingham, England. I wonder if Birmingham, Alabama's on. Arkansas, Shreveport, welcome. Washington, Lauderdale, welcome. Dallas, Charleston, Cleveland, Scarlett, Wisconsin, Huntsville, Alabama, welcome. Always like Huntsville. Only been there a few times. Always good whenever I went there. New York, there's Chandler. Louisiana. We've got so many people checking in this time. Middle of nowhere. Well, I thought that's where I was. Middle of nowhere. Have that here. We've got a minute to go. 1 minute before we get started. A lot of folks checking in. They're going by so fast I can't even name them off anymore. Atlanta and Seattle, New Orleans, St. Vincent in the Caribbean, Utah, San Diego, Atlanta. You got a lot going on there. Yeah, Zimbabwe is a country. It went by. I was naming them off. He didn't say where in Zimbabwe, just said Zimbabwe. We've got a lot to go through for this. Let's see if we can fix some of this. I think we can. There we go. When is CompTIA releasing the 601? We're about to talk about that in the first few minutes here. Let's get things started here. I need a keynote. Where is that? That's right there. We need a green light. Sort of looking over my shoulder now. There's keynote. We need a green light on the keynote. Do we got a green light? We do. Play on that. I think we're ready to get started, everybody. Let's do a study group. Cameras look good. This looks good. It's time to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2020 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is our SY0-501 Security Plus Study Group, coming to you live from Messer Studios. Thanks for being here. We were just chatting earlier in the pre-show to the folks in the chat room who have joined us from all over the world. Welcome. We have in this first hour for you questions that come directly from the SY0-501 exam. I'll be asking you these questions, and you will be interactively answering these questions online. Here's how you do it. You would go to professormesser.com/QA. So pop open a new browser window. You go directly to that page, and then you just sit there. And on that page, do nothing but sit on that page and watch what's going on. So that makes it easy to do. If you'd like to use a mobile app for this, you can get an app called the Socrative Student app. There's a Socrative app for teachers. You don't want that one. That one's for me. Get the Socrative Student app, and you'll be able to also follow along there as well. If you do that and you're able to open up the app or you're able to go to that website, then you have a question waiting for you. And that question asks, instead of logging in with a username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. Which of the following would best describe this arrangement? Would it be multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, federation, TOTP, or 802.1x? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. Be able to see everything there, and we will come back to this question in just a moment. So thank you for being here. We're not able to do this study group without your help, so it's nice that you're here and joining us. We also have weekly Security Plus questions that are available on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find those at professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. They're also on LinkedIn at professormesser.com/LinkedIn. They're also on Facebook at professormesser.com/Facebook. You see a trend here. That's what that's about. So professormesser.com/whatever you would like to find me on. For example, professormesser.com/YouTube will find us on YouTube, where you are able to subscribe and like videos, and I encourage you to do so. Please do so. I don't want to beg, but I'm not below that. I'm happy to beg. So thank you for your help there as well. I also want to let you know that the conversations, the questions, everything we're going to talk about today come directly from the SY0-501 exam. The SY0-501 was released on October the 4th of 2017. It will be retired on July 2021. So as we are making this, we are in October of 2020. We have until July. So we have about 9 months or so, just under now. 9 months before the existing Security Plus exam goes away. I highly recommend you study for this exam and take the SY0-501 before it is retired if you can. The SY0-601 will be the new version of the exam that is released next month. So in November, a month from now, probably less, the 601 will be available. So from next month, November, until July of 2021, you can take either one of these. You can take the 501 or you can take the 601. You get to decide which one you would like to take. One of the things that will be a challenge for you if you are thinking about the 601 is the 601 exam. There won't be any books available for the 601 exam probably until January, February. A lot of them don't come out until March. The 601 is a enormous exam. It's a big exam. It's much larger by half than the SY0-501. So there's much more that you will have to learn. And half of the exam is brand new content. So this is a challenge. This new 601 will be a challenging exam. If you have the ability to take the 501, I highly recommend you do it. Whether you take the 501 or the 601 doesn't matter. You get exactly the same Security Plus certification. So there's no downside to taking the 501. There's no upside to taking the 601. It's the end is exactly the same. Just the mean is different. It depends on which exam you take. In fact, I feel so strongly about it. I made a video of this called Why You Shouldn't Wait for the SY0-601 Security Plus exam. And in fact, I probably should rename it to Why You Should Take the 501 as long as you possibly can. So I go through all of my reasons why I think that is. I tell you exactly what topics and how many are changed between the exams. All of the details are there. You can find that on my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. In the meantime, you can, of course, look at the objectives from the exam. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. Download all of those objectives for either the 501 or 601, depending on which exam you're going to take. The exam, whether you take the 501 or the 601, it is a 90-minute exam. Both of them are exactly the same. Both of them will give you a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90. You will require a passing score of 750 on a scale from 100 to 900 on both of the exams. So the scoring hasn't changed. The type of exam hasn't changed. The number of questions you get hasn't changed. Nothing changed with the method. The only thing that changed was the questions that they're going to be asking you. So that's the real difference between the exams. And of course, the exams have both multiple choice and performance-based questions. We'll talk in a moment about what some of those differences might be. One of the things I've done is I've tried to put everything together into one single success bundle. This is where all of my SY0-501 materials are, my videos, my audio files, my practice exams, my course notes, my exam hacks ebook, which is only available on my success bundle. My exclusive Q&A access to the Security Plus study group is there. So if I don't answer you directly in email, I'll answer you on this live stream and you get first crack at the Q&A. You can find out about that on my website, professormesser.com/501SB. I also got free questions on my site if you want to practice yourself. These are my Take 10 questions for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Go to professormesser.com/take10. These 10 question chunks of exam questions might help you out. So questions we took directly from our study group. So something that might help you as well. This study group is available for a video replay immediately when we are done. It gets processed for a few minutes on YouTube, and then you have access to it. There's also an audio-only podcast version of this available that you can listen in. If you're in the car, you're working out, you don't want to look at a screen, you don't want to see my face, I get it. But you can go to professormesser.com/podcast and get the audio-only version. That might help you out as well. It's professormesser.com/podcast. Also let you know, our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube, if you go there to look at the replays, about a day after we do these live streams, my marketing manager, Lori, who has to sit and listen to this whole thing. Hi, Lori. Chat room, say hi to Lori. She's listening in. She's watching the replay, and she is giving timestamps in the YouTube video description so that if you go back and look at a replay anytime in the last couple of years, you can jump immediately to the timestamp you're looking for. It's right there in the video description. I think it's a great way to find some of the things you may be looking for. It helps you go through the study groups a little faster, get everything you need to be able to pass that Security Plus exam. You'll find that on professormesser.com/YouTube. I'll also let you know a little bit of self-promotion, as if there hasn't been enough already. I've mentioned in earlier study groups that I was working on a video that described the 5 most common reasons, or 5 of the most common reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. So if you keep submitting resumes out and you're not getting a response back, I have a video that steps through the 5 biggest, or some of the 5 biggest ones. I found a lot. In fact, I'm going to do another video. I found so many. There's another video coming of the 5 reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. You'll find that at professormesser.link/first5, or just go to my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube, and you'll be able to find the 5 reasons why your resume might be getting rejected. And I give you some tips how you might get a little better chance of getting through the machines and getting to a person. Have a look at that video. It might help you out in your job hunt. Let's talk about that question I asked earlier, which was, instead of logging in with a username and password, a website links to Google to provide credentials. You've probably seen this on websites that you've been on. Which of the following would best describe this arrangement? Is it multi-factor authentication? Is it a single sign-on? Is it federation? Is it TOTP? Is it 802.1x? What is it? Well, we can click the How Do We Do button, and you can see that 51% of you say that's federation is what that is. We know that if you are looking to try to federate, then you are indeed using a connection that is giving you different ways to log in that are going to a third party. For example, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You've probably seen these login pages that do this. That is federation. Obviously, it has to be configured and set up properly so that it works on the website of things. But if you are ever in the case where you're trying to figure that out and you're just really hoping to not have to fill in yet another registration form, just use your Google login. Just use your Facebook login. Use an existing authentication that you already have. It might make things a little simpler for you as well to be able to do that. That is federation. So the 53% of you either remembered this from last month, because this is our rewind question from last month, or perhaps it's one that you already knew. You're already studying for this and had it down. This would not be single sign-on. If it was single sign-on, it wouldn't have asked you for a username and password, would it? You've already single signed on somewhere else. So that's why it is not going to be single sign-on for this. Multi-factor authentication will be asking you for multiple forms of authentication. Something you are, somewhere you are, something you do, something you have. All of those different types of factors that you would run into with multi-factor authentication. TOTP, time-based one-time password. That's one where you're getting a different password every 30 seconds on your app or your mobile device that you have to be able to do that. And the 802.1x is a method of authentication that goes back to a centralized database that is somewhere usually with Radius or TACACS or LDAP or Kerberos. And it's using that to centralize all your logins instead of requiring you to have a different login for everything you happen to hit. So in this case, the answer is indeed federation. If you answered C, the 54% of you got that. Absolutely right. Well done. Well done. You're off to a good start. So let's keep that good start going. The next thing we're going to do then, and for some of you that have been on these study groups before, our first new question of the month is not a multiple choice question like the one we just had. That's a multiple choice where I give you a question and there's multiple choices to choose from. We are going to do a performance-based question, PBQs. So you can go back through our entire archive and see a different performance-based question every month. Performance-based questions are questions that are anything but multiple choice. It might be fill in the blank. It might be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. It might put you in a screen where you have to drag and drop different things or choose from pull-down menus. You may have to put things in order from highest to lowest. Maybe a matching question. So there's a lot of different options for performance-based questions. I have one for you this month. So our performance-based question of the month is a command line question. This command line question asks, ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. So this is an interactive one. You have to do this one live to be able to answer this question. Ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. So there's a couple things you're going to have to think about. How do you figure out what that is? And then give me the full ping that you're going to do to be able to perform this particular request. Ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. So for some of you that are looking at this, you're thinking, wait, there's not just one thing you're going to have to do. You're absolutely right. The hint I will give you is this is a multi-step question. You have to perform one command line task to get part of the question and another command line task to get the other part of the question. And you have to do it right now live on the internet to be able to do that. So hopefully, I haven't seen anyone answer right quite yet to be able to do that. Ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. Nobody's gotten it yet. Oh, no, one person got it. I take that back. Two people got it. So I see the answers that are coming in. So some of you are getting these. This is kind of a hard one, isn't it? Kind of have to think about how would I determine what these are and then how would I perform that function. So have a look at this. That might help you. Now, if you are figuring this one out, you're going through the process and trying to make these happen, remember, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this out on our own. And obviously, you can't Google it because I didn't pull this from Google. I made this one myself. Those of you that don't know Quad9 is a DNS provider. So that's one of those where you do have different options available to choose your DNS provider. And Quad9 is an excellent DNS provider. So maybe this will help you And some of you, yes, you can't do what you're supposed to be able to do because you're on a work network. I give you a pass on that one. You explained it. Yes, check mark. Works fine for me to be able to have that. And some of you are doing really, really well with this. Some of you have worked out very well. So let's see how we figure this out. The question itself is one we kind of have to parse out to begin with. So a number of you have gotten your answers in. Let's see if I can give you an answer for this one. So the question was, I needed to ping the router that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. So here's my computer. If I don't go all the way to the upper left corner and black out the entire thing, now it's just a black screen. There we go. So we'll pull it back to the top. So here is my terminal screen. I'll try to make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. I want to be able first to answer this question. This question is kind of vague. It says ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. Well, how do I know what router sits in front of a particular host? I need to perform some command line to be able to determine what that is. So one of the best ways to get a list of every router between my machine and another device is to run a trace route. And I'm going to run a trace route to 9.9.9.9. And when I run this trace route, we see that it goes through 13 different hops. It goes from my IP address on my router, which internally is 10.1.10.1. It goes out over the Comcast network because I am on the Comcast network. It finally, at the very bottom, gets to DNS9.quad9.net, which is the quad 9. Gives me some response time numbers. Notice it gives me a !Z, which is traceroute telling me that the person who manages that machine at 9.9.9.9 has administratively configured it not to respond back to me. So this is one where we're getting a little feedback that they are making it so their equipment runs much faster because they are simply rejecting some of these requests coming through. What we want to do is look at the hop just prior to this particular IP address. And if we look at that, it is, in my particular case, 50.248.117.86. So this is where the router is that's just before host 9.9.9.9, which is what we were looking at. We were looking to ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. And your IP address that you got will probably be different, maybe very different, because Quad 9 is a very distributed network. They got a lot of different routers, a lot of different IP addresses. In my particular case, with this particular trace route, it's 50.248.117.86. So to complete our performance-based question, I would ping 50.248.117.86, and that is the answer to our performance-based question, where I was able to determine what the router was just prior to 9.9.9.9, and then I was able to finally ping that particular IP address. Both of those together would be the answer to this particular performance-based question, which asks me to ping the router IP that sits just before host 9.9.9.9. So some of you had it. Some of you, I noticed, were running this. You were able to figure this out and make sure you knew what this was. In my particular case, I'm on Mac OS, so it's the full traceroute command. If you're on Windows, it will be traceRT. Same command, just a different number of letters to be able to run that. But traceRT would certainly be the one that you would use. It would give you the same type of results, and you would run the same ping command to be able to make that work. Either one of those will work fine. TraceRT or traceroute. Linux is going to be traceroute all spelled out, very similar to what I just did, to be able to have that there. Hopefully that's giving you some perspective over how to make some of these command lines work properly. And if you are someone who is working through these, you know that traceroute gives you a number of different options. And ping, of course, is one that you should be very familiar with to be able to use, because you're going to be using ping all the time with everything that you're doing. So that's the answer that you want to have for this performance-based question, is run the traceroute and then run the ping command. And if you got a different host on your IP addresses, that's perfectly fine, as long as you go through the same process. Or if you're at work, you knew what the process was to get there, I'm going to give you credit on that one. You should give yourself some points, just a smattering of points. Give yourself 5 or 10 points for that one. Whatever you feel is appropriate, whatever you think is good for you. After all, we want to be sure that we get the right number. We want to be sure we we are agreeing with ourselves that that was the right answer. So that is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to go to that command prompt to perform those functions. Let's now do another multiple choice-based question. We're going to shift gears a bit. The next question is one that asks, an attacker is not able to embed malicious JavaScript into an online forum post. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be input validation, stored procedures, obfuscation, code signing, or encryption? An attacker is not able to embed malicious JavaScript into an online forum post. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be input validation, stored procedures, obfuscation, code signing, or encryption? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Now, if you are in the chat room, please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We have to figure out how to make that happen. If you want to answer the question, go to professormesser.com/QA and you can lock in your answer. Hopefully that's one where you remember the video on this one. I think I even gave this very specific example in the video because it's a very common one. So see if you happen to know what this one is. This is one that should be one on top of your, this is one you should really keep in mind. Because this is a very common thing for the bad guys to do. Attackers love to put malicious JavaScript into an online forum. They just find that's very useful for what they want to do. So see if you know what the answer is. A number of you are putting in your answers. And remember, no Googling. You can't Google this. It's not something you can Google. So you have to be able to figure all of those out. If you think you know the answer, professormesser.com/QA. In fact, you can just stay on that page. The questions will change automatically as I step through them as we go through all of this. Let's see how we did with this one. We'll go through this question again, which asked, an attacker is not able to embed malicious JavaScript into an online forum post. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be input validation, stored procedures, obfuscation, code signing, or encryption? How'd we do? 78% of you say input validation. That's a pretty strong response, a pretty significant majority. 11% said code signing, and then single digits. 5% said obfuscation, 4% said encryption, 3% said stored procedures. I think all three of those, almost a tie to have that information. A lot of us thought it was input validation, because that's exactly what this is. It's validating the input of what somebody's putting in to a forum post, to a chat room. Anytime that input is going in and it has to be stored or interpreted by that server, it needs to be validated to make sure someone doesn't put in anything malicious. And this is a great way for the bad guys to embed their malicious software directly in a third-party site. They don't even have to be there anymore. They can log off, but their malicious code stays on that particular page, and then they are able to see what's going on there. This comes directly from my SY0-501 course, 3.6 Secure Coding Techniques. I put those QR codes on so you can, if you're watching this on a video and you want to pull up the video of the response to this, that course video in another window, you certainly can from there. Hopefully that gives you some perspective. So the 78% of you that thought input validation was the right answer, you were spot on. No question about that. You had a very, very good response with that one. That is the right answer. That's what you want to do, is validate the input before it's stored so that we don't have any type of attacks to be able to, for the bad guys to be able to reference. Very useful to have that there. That is one I think most of you knew. So now we're going to do another multiple choice question. Let's keep this going. The next question on our list asks, which of the following would be the best way to require a particular password length? Would that be group policy, full disk encryption, least privilege, auditing, or a service account? Which of the following would be the best way to require a particular password length? Would that be group policy, full disk encryption, least privilege, auditing, or service account? Maybe you know the answer. If you think you do, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answers. And again, remember, no answers in the chat room. Want to figure this out, which one of these it happens to be. All 5 of these, of course, are particular controls that you can apply, but you may not find that all of them apply back to what this question is asking for. So make sure you step through each one of these to figure out which one of these would be the best way to perform a particular function, to answer the question, to do what all of these happen to be. That would be a good way to do it. See if you are familiar with this. In the chat room, somebody earlier was asking, should I read through SY0-401 materials for the 501 exam? I highly recommend you do not do that. The last Security Plus exam was an enormous change. The next Security Plus exam is going to be another enormous change. There's so much difference between exams that if you study from the wrong version, you will fail your next version of the exam. So make sure that if you are studying for the SY0-501, that you are only studying from SY0-501 materials. Don't study from 401. Don't study from 601. If you plan on taking the SY0-601, make sure you have SY0-601 materials, which, by the way, don't exist yet. Probably won't exist until January. So that's one of those situations where you do have to be familiar with all of these. Hopefully that'll help you too as you're going through this and figuring out the details. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following would be the best way to require a particular password length? Would that be group policy? Would it be full disk encryption? Would it be least privilege? Would it be auditing? Or would it be a service account? Let's see how we did. 88% of you said group policy is what you would use for something like that. 4% said service account, 4% said auditing, 3% said full disk encryption, only 1% said least privilege. So group policy seems to be what everybody thinks you would use. And if you're somebody who's working on a Windows network, group policy is absolutely what allows you to set some administrative controls over what people do with security, how their workstation operates, how everything happens on these systems. The security policies allow you to set minimum password lengths, whether you should use a smart card or not, whether there is a particular log size maxed out for Security Plus, for the security log itself. All of these things can be configured. You can see a number of different security settings. Group policy, probably one of the biggest advantages Windows has in the enterprise, and you can see why. You can control everything from group policy. That's the correct answer in this case, was group policy. Now, what about these other options? We had 3% of you said full disk encryption, which is great for protecting data on a drive, especially if somebody gets their hands on this drive. They wouldn't have access to the data because full disk encryption encrypts everything on that particular drive. You have 4% of you that said auditing. The auditing capabilities inside of Windows allow you to track what people are doing, but it doesn't necessarily require that a particular password length is set. It simply tells you what people happen to be doing. A service account is one you would configure in Windows to perform a particular task. Service accounts are fantastic for doing that, but service accounts would not be a way to require a particular password length. They would be used to run a particular service, which is not something that we'd normally even worry about unless you were managing a particular server to have that happen. And then 1% of you said least privilege, which is a security technique that requires that you only give people the permission and access they need to be able to perform their task and nothing more than that. Least privilege is an important security technique, but least privilege is not a way to require a particular password length. So that's one of those cases where there's really only one answer that fits here. It would be a group policy. That is the right answer. And if you are anyone who's worked in a Windows network, you know group policy, the best way to do it. Some folks asked in the chat room, what is the Linux equivalent to group policy? The problem is that the other operating systems really don't have a very good equivalent to group policy. That Windows environment, that entire ecosystem is very well established with their group policy settings that everyone else is not even close to being able to provide that level of control of those workstations. So it's one of those where Active Directory is an enormous advantage, which is why you still see Windows everywhere. They really control the enterprise because you wouldn't be able to manage hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of computers without some centralized management. Active Directory really does provide that. Let's do another question. I've got another one ready to go here. The next question on our list asks, what type of security control specifies the time of day that a particular location would be accessible? Would that be deterrent, compensating, preventive, administrative, or physical? What type of security control specifies the time of day that a particular location would be accessible? Is that deterrent, compensating, preventive, administrative, or physical? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. This is not one I was ready for. I'm trying to remember all these questions. I make these questions about a week earlier, and then I promptly forget them. So they're new to me too. As I step through them, I think that's a good question. Who wrote that? Oh wait, I did a week ago. I just don't remember it. And this time I've already written another week's worth of pop quiz questions. We've got Security Plus and Network Plus. I've already created more content for a course somewhere. So I'm sorry, I don't remember these. So I have to remember, now I have to, of course, go back and think, what was the answer? You know, this is the other part of it, is I wrote the question, but do I know what the answer happens to be? That's the other part I have to remember. So I do have a cheat sheet. I can check on the screen next to me. So some of you, so in the case where I really don't remember, I can always flip back and go, oh, that's right. That's what the answer happens to be. It's me. I get to play along with you just to see if I happen to know what it is when I go through this piece of it. So that's very useful to have that. Let's see how we did with this one. A number of you have answered this one, got your answers locked in. I see the numbers. Oh, the numbers are still going up there. Maybe I'll give you a second as the numbers keep moving up there. What type of security control specifies the time of day that a particular location would be accessible? Is that a deterrent, compensating, preventive, administrative, or physical? And we're a little torn on this one, aren't we? We've got 43% of us that have said administrative. 23% and 25% say that it's preventive and physical, respectively. You got 6% that say deterrent and 3% that say compensating. So we've got a mix of different control types we need to step through. Let's talk about these control types for a moment. There are technical control types. That was not one of the options available, but technical control types would allow us to control the security with something technical. If you're putting in some type of operating system control, like group policy, would be a technical control type, for example. We've got administrative control types. That's something that's useful. Administrative control types will control or determine how people are acting, or at least tell them how they should be acting if they're doing this. And one of these here would be setting particular security policies or setting standardized operating procedures. And in this particular case, setting a security control that says you may not access a location unless it is a particular time of day is not something that's technical. It's not something that's preventive. It's not compensating. It's not a deterrent. It's not physical at all. This is just a policy that's been made. This is a decision administratively that has been made that says, here's what we're going to decide for access to a particular location. So the one that best fits the 5 options available here would indeed be administrative. That is the control that we would be most interested in. That's the one that decided, yeah, just going to choose a particular time of day, and only that time of day would allow you to get through that. If you answer D, administrative, that is the right answer. We have other control types here. Deterrent is one that would prevent people from gaining access to a particular area. In this particular case, the time of day doesn't prevent us from doing anything. It's the time of day. It's just a sort of a number that we have decided that is allowing or disallowing access, but it is not a locked door deterring us from getting into a particular room. A locked door would also be a physical control, and that's one thing you have to keep in mind with these technical controls, these security controls of technical, deterrent, compensating, preventive, administrative, physical, is you could have some controls that will fit into multiple categories. So that's one thing you'll find in my videos as well, is that I have different things that I have single type of controls that I put into multiple categories. So would be one of those cases as well. You have, you could possibly fit this into a technical control if there was a mention of what the technical control was. For instance, there is a lock on the door that specifies the time of day. That might be a technical control for the timer and a door for physical, but the question didn't mention that. The question said it is only administrative in this particular case. Compensating control, we're not compensating if somebody gains access to the room. That's not the situation we're in, so we wouldn't somehow log it or alert on it or give us something. Preventive would prevent somebody from gaining access to the location, but there would have to be something we mentioned that would prevent it. Would it be a locked door that's on a timer? Would it be your card won't work during certain times of the day? Perhaps, but we didn't mention any of that. We just said that we're specifying a time of day that a particular location would not be accessible. The only one that really fits best here would be administrative. That's the one I would have chosen as well. If you want to find out more information on these, it's from my video 5.7, Security Controls. You can also scan that QR code, and it will take you right to the video as well. Section 5.7, that matches the Security Plus exam objectives for the SY0-501. So that's another one of those examples where the video numbers match the objective numbers. So if you're trying to sync all of these things up, that's where those numbers come from for the control types. That video again called Security Controls. That's what I would choose as well. Administrative, 45% of you chose that one. I think that's what we'll go with here as well. That is the right answer. If you chose D, got that one absolutely correct. So a lot there to deal with, a lot of different kind of questions that are being asked here as well. One of the challenges I find with the Security Plus exam is that the questions themselves are in a particular cadence. There's a particular voice to them. It's a particular style of asking questions. It's not straightforward. It's usually a little bit of a story that they give you, and you have to choose the right answer based on the story that's given to you. What I found is that there's not a lot of great places to go to get practice questions for Security Plus. And so I wrote my own set of practice questions that I feel best emulate the style or the voice of the exam. These are brand new questions, though. I wrote every single one of these questions brand new. You've never seen these questions because I've never done them anywhere else. You've never seen them anywhere else, and you won't see them anywhere else except this book, my SY0-501 Security Plus Practice Exams book. I have performance-based questions. I have multiple choice-based questions. There are 3 full exam questions, exams in here. So 3 90-question exams. I have one here. Let's do one, a question that's, since we can fit more Q&A in here. This is a question. I've got the book right here, so we can go through this. So let's do question A10, which asks, an IPS at your company has found a sharp increase in traffic from all-in-one printers. After researching, your security team has found a vulnerability associated with these devices that allows the device to be remotely controlled by a third party. Doesn't sound good. Which category would best describe these devices? Is it IoT, RTOS, MFD, or SOC? So you have 4 choices to choose from. Now, of course, my book is one question after another, but if you have this digital version of the book, you can click on the quick answer or the details, and it will take you directly to the details page, page 51, because we're on page 15 right now. But if we click that, it fast forwards us in the book, gives us the question and the answers again, and tells us what the answer is. It's C, a multifunction device, an MFD. So that is what you would choose there. And it gives you also the reason why that is the right answer. So there's always an explanation of why that is the right answer. What I also do, because I'm always getting the answers wrong, and I want to know, why is this answer wrong? So for each wrong answer, I tell you why that particular answer is wrong. So every single question in the book and every single answer is documented this way. And you can see why the other 3 responses were not the right answers. And then lastly, I put right at the bottom the link to the Security Plus exam objective and the video that talks about the topic where this question came from. I also have QR codes here, so you can jump right to that, or you can click the screen. And the reason I put the QR code is, of course, there's a physical version of the practice exams book. So if you wanted to also get the physical one, it's thick. Look how thick that book is. That's a big book to have all of those questions, because there are 3 full exams in there with all 3 of those answer pages for each one of these. So this is an example where you got performance-based questions, you got multiple choice-based questions. They're all in here. If you buy the physical version, you get the digital version for free, because it costs a little bit more to print this out and send it to you. And of course, it takes time to get to you. So that's one that will get to you in that physical version. If you want more information on that, you can find it on my website, professormesser.com/securitype. Oh, also, once we were done with this, we click the back button in our browser, goes right back to where we were, and then we can go to the next question on our list. So that's another way. You can either go through the entire thing and make a note of what your answers are, or you can simply switch back and forth and go one question at a time. We'll find out more at professormesser.com/securitype. One of the best ways you might be able to study for that exam. It's a great way to test to see if you really are ready to take the exam. That's something that might help you too. So hopefully that's something that you'll be able to take advantage of. Let's do some more questions. I've got more Security Plus questions for you. So let's do another one. Here is our next multiple choice-based question, and it asks, Sam is digitally signing a document that will be sent to Jack. Which of the following would Jack use to validate the digital signature? Would he use Jack's private key, Sam's private key, Jack's public key, Sam's public key, or a DH-derived symmetric key? Got a few choices available. Sam is digitally signing a document that will be sent to Jack. Which of the following would Jack use to validate the digital signature? Would it be Jack's private key, Sam's private key, Jack's public key, Sam's public key, or a DH-derived symmetric key? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. Well, you wanted more cryptography questions, so I thought I'd give you more cryptography questions. So hopefully you're familiar with this, dealing with digital signatures and making that work. See if you can step through this and you know the answer to what this is. Lock in your answer, professormesser.com/QA. If you've not done this, if you've not done digital signatures or worked with the public and private key encryption methods, you should do this. Grab PGP, PGP, or even GPG, the free version of that. Make a key pair. Have a friend do exactly the same, or find my key out on a public key server. My email is james@professormesser.com, and send me a message that has been encrypted, and let's see if I can send you one back. See if I can read it, see if I can respond to it, and see if I can send you back an encrypted message by using your new keys. It's a good test and a good lab you can do for yourself, something practical. So a great thing to go through. GPG is the GNU private, GNU public. What is GPG? Why am I having that? Why is that happening to my brain right now? GNU Privacy Guard. Thank you. GNU Privacy Guard. Losing my mind. Great tool, by the way. It's what I use on Mac OS. Works on Windows. Works on Linux. It's a great tool to be able to do. And then we can send messages back and forth that way. And you can, of course, test your digital signatures. You can test your public-private key encryption. We can see if it's working the proper way. You're more than welcome to do that. Send it to james@professormesser.com. And if you're looking on the public key servers, it's under james@professormesser.com to be able to do that. You could use SMIME to do this, but SMIME, I don't have an SMIME key, so kind of difficult to do. SMIME, a little bit more of a closed environment to be able to use that. So that's why I use PGP or GNU Privacy Guard, because it's open. It uses the web of trust. That's something that we can all use and doesn't cost any money. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, Sam is digitally signing a document that will be sent to Jack. Which of the following would Jack use to validate the digital signature? Is it Jack's private key, Sam's private key, Jack's public key, Sam's public key, or a DH-derived symmetric key? And 54% of you say you would use Sam's public key. But look at the distribution for all of the others. We have 16% said Sam's private key, 14% said Jack's private key, 9% said Jack's public key, 55% said Sam's public key, 7% said a Diffie-Hellman-derived symmetric key. So here's what we're going to do is step through the process of creating a digital signature. So in this case, instead of Alice's computer, it'd be Sam's computer. Sam is creating a digital signature and sending it to Jack. So although it says Alice on here, because we use A and B, Alice and Bob, in all of our cryptography demonstrations. But let's say it's Sam. And Sam has a document. She wants to digitally sign this document. She figures out a way to grab that document. There's a hashing algorithm that occurs. And that hash is then encrypted with Sam's private key. So Sam, of course, Sam is the only one who has access to her private key. And then she is encrypting the hash. That effectively becomes the digital signature. And it's important to remember with this is that digital signatures are not a way to protect the data or the document. They're simply a way to tell if the document has been changed and to be sure that this document really did come from Sam. So Sam will attach that digital signature to the plain text document and send that on. Now, of course, Sam could also encrypt that file, but I'm keeping the encryption process separate here so we can really just focus on digital signatures. And in fact, this is exactly what I do when I send you a continuing education unit email. You'll notice that there's an attachment that is my digital signature. So this is exactly the process I use whenever I send you one of those emails. We'll talk more about that in a moment. On the other side, Jack's going to receive this, and Jack's going to get that message, and he's going to decrypt the message, really the hash, the digital signature hash at the bottom. He's going to decrypt it with the public key from Sam, because Sam's public key is publicly available. Sam encrypted it with her private key. You can reverse kind of the process there by using the other pair of the key, the other side of the key pair. So that will leave you with the hash. Now all that Jack has to do is run his own hash on the original document, compare that to the digital signature hash that he got from Sam. And if those match up, then those two compare properly. If those don't match, then something changed with the original document. And then we know somebody got in there and changed it, or there was some corruption of the file, or something else happened that caused those not to match. But that is the process of verifying it. So in this case, those of you that answered Sam's public key, that is exactly what Jack would use to validate that signature, because originally Sam encrypted the hash with her private key. So we need the other side of that hash to be able to make that happen. That is a kind of a complex process. That whole thing that goes on there, you don't really see the details of this behind the scenes. All you really see is you click the button that says verify this digital signature, and your email says, okay, here you go. I verified it, and it verifies okay. Behind the scenes, this is really what's going on with those digital signatures. That is the right answer. It would not be Jack's private key because that would require Sam to digitally sign the document with Jack's public key. Well, if everybody has access to Jack's public key, that means anybody could grab this document somewhere in between, change it, use the same public key to change the digital signature. And when Jack gets it and verifies it, it looks like everything's fine. So that would not be the right answer. You also wouldn't use Sam's private key. Jack doesn't have access to Sam's private key. It's Sam's private key to be able to do that. So that's one of those examples where that wouldn't be the right answer either. Jack's public key would not be used to validate the digital signature because it was not encrypted with Jack's private key, because only Jack has access to his private key. Sam does not have access to Jack's private key. So that would not be the right answer either. The only one that makes sense here is Sam's public key. And it would not be Diffie-Hellman symmetric keys either, although you could use that to do some of these things. That's not what we use when we're doing digital signatures. There's some other reasons why we wouldn't, but since we already have the public and private key and it's already part of the process, why involve yet another step of using Diffie-Hellman and a symmetric key? We've already got everything we need in the public-private key pairs that are right there. The only option, the one that works here, is Sam's public key. That's what we would use. Now, speaking of continuing education unit credit, I mentioned that whenever I send you a verification that you watch this, that I always digitally sign those emails. So here's how you can receive one of those digitally signed emails. What you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You want to click on the link that says Contact Us. That's going to bring up a form. In that form, put your name, put your email address, put in the subject line that this is the October 2020 Security Plus Study Group. And on the line by itself in that particular message, put the super secret code word of Sam's public key. That is our super secret code word phrase of the month. It's getting more complex every time, isn't it? Sam's public key is what you want to put in on a line by itself. And then if you want to put anything else in there, to be able to have that there, you're welcome to do so. Now, technically speaking, CompTIA doesn't require that you show them this particular email. They don't require you submit this particular email or do anything special. They take it on your word that you were here. But I like to send you these so that you have something that if they happen to show up, because sometimes they do audit these things, they will audit it and they will say, okay, well then you must have. Here's a document. It's been digitally signed by Professor Messer. We accept that hour of webinar category CEU because you do have the email that's there. So that's what you would do with it, which is probably nothing. But at least you've got something there to be able to have that capability. Now, whenever I start stepping through these things, you'll often find that is a challenge in making sure you have enough CEUs. So you can't watch all of my study groups for all 50 of the CEUs that you would need. You can only get 10 of those, but hopefully that's something that can help you as you go through this. We have time for another question, so let's do another question. I've got one for you. This question asks, a security administrator, let me click the next button here. Security administrator is running a non-credentialed vulnerability scan. Which of the following would most likely be included in this scan result? Would it be a list of applications containing known vulnerabilities? Would it be the date and size of the installed BIOS version? Would it be the version number of a vulnerable web server? Would it be a list of user accounts on the device? Or would it be the number of documents in the user's home directory? So a security administrator is running a non-credentialed vulnerability scan. Which of the following would most likely be included in this scan result? Would it be a list of installed applications containing known vulnerabilities? Would it be the date and size of the installed BIOS version? Would it be the version number of a vulnerable web server? Would it be a list of user accounts on the device? Or would it be the number of documents in the user's home directory? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This is one we may have to go through each one of those a couple times just to make sure that you happen to know what that was. It might help you as you step through it. So that might help with being able to make that happen. That's whenever I start stepping through these things, I often find that a number of these, whoops, I almost gave you the answer. Did you see that? It almost told you the answer on that one. I clicked the wrong button. So hopefully that's one that you can step through. But I didn't give you the answer, did I? I have to figure out what these happen to be. Whenever I start trying to break these things out too, it also helps if you are familiar with what some of these topics are and what people do with this. Hopefully it's just something that you are familiar with. Whenever I even step through this, I try to break this down and figuring out the details. This is one where it does become useful to know what some of these terms are. So lock in your answer. We'll see if you do know what some of these terms are. It might help you out with making this work. So hopefully that's something you can figure out with all of these. So let's see how you did with this one. The question was, a security administrator is running a non-credentialed vulnerability scan. Which of the following would most likely be included in the scan result? Would it be a list of installed applications containing known vulnerabilities? Would it be the date and size of the installed BIOS version? Would it be the version number of a vulnerable web server? Would it be a list of user accounts on the device? Or would it be the number of documents in the user's home directory? Let's see how we did with this one. 51% of us say a list of installed applications containing known vulnerabilities. 26% of you say the version number of a vulnerable web server. 10% said a list of user accounts on the device. 9% said the date and size of the installed BIOS version. And then 5% said the number of documents in the user's home directory. Well, this is one where we first have to know what a non-credentialed vulnerability scan is. Not all vulnerability scans work the same way. The scanners that we use when we're outside of this machine and trying to gain access to be able to get access to these things work a little bit differently. There are some vulnerability scan types that will not try to do any type of exploitation. They don't really go into a lot of detail or querying of a particular application. They're just trying to gather information. We call those non-intrusive scans. Whereas a more intrusive vulnerability scan might try to poke around to see if it can gain more access from a particular application, or maybe even try out the vulnerability in some particular cases. A non-credentialed scan, which is the one from our question, the non-credentialed scan is one where the scanning device cannot log into the remote device. It does not have access to the remote device. If you were trying to run a vulnerability scan on my server, you wouldn't be able to log into my server because you don't have any login credentials. So most of the time when we are outside looking in, we are running a non-credentialed scan. The time when we might have a credentialed scan is somebody's given you a username and password. That means that the vulnerability scanner can authenticate and log into that device, and they'll be able to gather more information because they have more information to the operating system. They can gather more details. In our particular case, it was a non-credentialed scan. The scanner cannot log into the remote device. So if you can't log in, there's certain information that will simply not be available to you. So, for example, a list of installed applications containing known vulnerabilities. If you're a non-credentialed scan, how do you know what applications are installed? You have no idea on the outside what applications are installed. So this is one of those cases where if you're trying to figure out what applications are on this computer, well, the only way to know is if you have some type of access to the system. So a list of installed applications, you don't know that with a non-credentialed scan. That would not be the right answer. The date and size of the installed BIOS version, those would, thinking about this, gaining access to what BIOS is installed, the size of the BIOS, the version of the BIOS. You can certainly find that information if you are logged into the system. But if you're not logged into the system, you don't have access to those details. It would not be the date and size of the installed BIOS version. A list of user accounts on the device. The only way you would get a list of user accounts is if you have access to the user list or the user account utility on that device. And that's not something that will help you at all if you're non-credentialed. You don't have access to that. A number of documents in the user's home directory. We certainly can't get to a user's home directory unless you are logged in to the system. That means the only thing on this list that you would have access to from outside are services that are publicly facing, like a web server. And it's very easy if the web server is publicly facing to find things like the version number and the type of web service that's running on that machine. That particular piece of information can be determined whether you are credentialed or not. So it doesn't matter that if you have a login or not, you will always be able to know what web server is running on that machine and what version of web server is running on that machine. And that's the one that is the right answer. If you answered C, the version number of a vulnerable web server, 26% of you got that one absolutely right. See, there was a quarter of you held strong. You said, wait a second, this is non-credentialed. So this is one where maybe we didn't get a majority to get that one right. But as I always say, you never want to get every single one of these right, then you don't learn anything. So getting things wrong is your only opportunity to gain more knowledge, if you want to think of it that way. Maybe not the only opportunity, but it's a great opportunity to get to learn more knowledge. So that's going to help you as well when you go through these. That's okay. I've got another question for you before we run out of time. We got 1 minute left. We're going to squeeze in another question. We're going to bounce back from this. Here's the next question. It asks, a security administrator would like to prevent users from emailing customer credit card information between sites. Good idea. Which of the following would be the best way to control these emails? Would it be a proxy, a load balancer, a DLP, a SIM, or a NAC? A security administrator would like to prevent users from emailing customer credit card information between sites. Which of the following would be the best way to control these emails? Would that be a proxy, a load balancer, a DLP, a SIM, or a NAC? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. That's where you can lock in your answer. Please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. Figure out what this one happens to be. You think we're going to bounce back on this one? I think we are. I feel good about this one. I feel strong. I feel like you know this one. Hopefully you're able to lock that in and get that answer. Yes, the 501 does indeed retire in July. If you're ever wondering this, and then these things sometimes do change, always make sure you check the CompTIA website. They have dates for all of these things on their site. If they don't put it on their site, then it's not official yet. So that's the best place to go for all of these. Maybe that'll help you too, figuring out the details of this. Security administrator would like to prevent users from emailing customer credit card information between sites. Which of the following would be the best way to control these emails? Would it be proxy, load balancer, DLP, SIM, or a NAC? Now, what's frustrating sometimes with these questions is, technically speaking, two of these could possibly be the right answer. But the question asked which of the following would be the best way to control these emails. Let's see if you were able to pick the best way. How did we do? 59% of you think the best way is a DLP. 18% said proxy. 15% said SIM. 8% said a NAC. 0%, I think one person might have said load balancer. So this is one where we really do have to step through what these different pieces are. Email, of course, is an enormous vector for the bad guys. They know they can send in emails, get people to click on links, fish out their data, and then have access to those systems. Or even worse, make them run applications all in the email. So what you want to be able to do is check inbound emails. You want to check outbound emails. You want to be sure that nobody's transmitting anything that is private or PII or healthcare information or whatever it happens to be. You want to make sure that inbound traffic is not trying to phish anybody, that's not an imposter, that it's not somebody using a spoofed email address to be able to do that. So this is one that does become very important, that you're able to take advantage of data loss prevention, or DLP. Data loss prevention is the best way to be able to block the bad stuff from going in and going out. So you're trying to block credit card numbers, trying to block private information, trying to block healthcare information. That has data loss prevention all over it. So DLPs, great way to stop credit card information, great way to stop social security numbers or other things as well. The 59% of you that chose DLP got it absolutely right, data loss prevention. Now, the 18% of you that said proxy, many proxies have this functionality in them as well. They have DLP as part of the proxy function. So there is some capability there, but not all proxies have DLP functionality. And quite honestly, the use of proxies is rapidly declining. These days, next generation firewalls do so much more than a proxy can do, and the next generation firewall stops so much more than a proxy could ever think to stop. So that is not only not the right answer for a DLP these days, not a very common thing to use for this particular piece either. A SIM, the Security Information and Event Manager, that is kind of a logging tool that allows you to report on consolidated logs that come from many different devices in your environment. A SIM does not stop or allow any type of traffic. It is a reporting tool, and being able to do that. So a SIM is one that would not apply in this case. A NAC, network access control, is used to determine whether somebody can gain access to a network, but it is not used to allow or disallow emails from going in and out. We would not use a NAC for that. And a load balancer, commonly used to balance a load across a server. That's not one that controls or looks for credit card numbers inside of email messages. So that's not one that's going to work either. Only 1% of you thought that would possibly be the case. Folks in the chat room said, could it be a UTM? If the UTM, first, UTMs are also one of those that nobody uses those anymore either because they're so slow. These days, next generation firewalls have effectively replaced the UTM of the past. There were some UTMs that had DLP functionality. Nobody ever turned them on because the moment you start turning things on a UTM, it starts slowing down. So although the functionality is there's a checkbox, yeah, we'll do DLP in the UTM. Unfortunately, it was just too clunky to be able to make that work very well. That's why we're all using next generation firewalls these days, to be able to have that happen. That is the right answer, DLP. If you're one of the 58% of us that chose DLP, you got that one absolutely right. Way to bounce back on that one. Very, very good to have that there. Now, for those of you that haven't been on one of these study groups, we do one of these study groups every month. Stop back by in November. We do A+ study groups on the 3rd and the 5th of November. I've got a Network Plus study group on the 11th, and we have a Security Plus study group on the 18th. And of course, the replay of all of my study groups are available on my website. You can go to professormesser.com/calendar to check out the calendar and see when the next live event is going to be. All of that's available on my site. Also let you know that if you like what you saw here and you're looking at my videos and you want a consolidated list of notes, they're all available on my SY0-501 course notes. You can find out about those course notes on my website at professormesser.com/securitycn. Wow, that was a lot in a single hour, wasn't it? Stick around for the after show, though. I'm going to turn on the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We can talk about the new Security Plus. We can talk about what you're doing with your career, or talk about anything else that's out there as well. Plenty to do along those lines. Don't forget about your weekly pop quiz question for Security Plus at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram or professormesser.com/LinkedIn if you're a LinkedIner. There's also all of my videos available for Security Plus on professormesser.com/YouTube. That becomes useful as well. My course notes and exams are on my website as well. There's the link that might get you there. Thank you for joining us. There's so much that we are able to do because you are here. We're not able to do very many questions when people don't show up. So now we've got all of you here answering questions. I love to have these available for you, and it makes it so much more fun. We can all step through it. And I feel like we're learning something along the way too, which is even better. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Now let's see if there we go, that's not the right camera. That's the right camera. Let's see if I can get things going here. And I have some more things that we can break down from here. I've got some other questions coming up also from my Success Bundle Priority Q&A, so stand by for that. And then we'll talk about the SY0-601 study materials and when they might be available as well. In the meantime, I need to call into my own show. So if you will bear with me a moment, I'm going to do exactly that. I got to click a button here and host my show. I have to start the show. I have to click some buttons on my screen here. It's too many buttons. It's just me here. There's not other people. So it takes me a second to kind of get things going. So if you would bear with me for just a moment.
The number you're from has been associated with high volume calling.
Oh.
To continue, press 9-5.
Well, didn't get that before. How about that? I typed it.
The number you are calling from has been associated with high volume calling.
Well, I think that's good.
To continue, press 9-0.
Come on. Are we just dancing around this now? I may not even be able to call into my own show. It did say that my connection was weak. How dare you? That hasn't happened before. We're going to have a whole nother show. There we go.
For calling.
So that's a little weird, isn't it? To have those things there. Let me call into my own show and get things going. Now she says.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
Yes, ma'am. I will do exactly that. And once I type in my 6-digit PIN, the nice lady says.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Why, thank you, nice lady. It's so nice to be here. So how about that? Almost wasn't able to get the study group going. Don't want that to happen, but we were able to get logged in You're able to get the phone lines up and running, and that means that you can also call in on the phone lines. The way that you would do that is to call our toll-free number in the continental U.S., which is 855-785-RJ45. You would also be able to contact us just by using the numbers, 855-785-7545. It's a great way to do it. You've also got ways that you could call in from anywhere in the world for free, because this is a toll-free number. If you're outside the continental U.S., you can use Skype, because Skype doesn't require any Skype minutes for a toll-free call. Just put a +1 at the beginning, like you see there on the screen. +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in as well with this. Well, I do have questions that came in. Some of you that do have my Success Bundle know that you get priority access. So you get the first question of the after show. So I did have a question come in the after show. This question was from Martin that asked, do you know of any free interactive / simulation tools? This is probably one of the number one questions I get, because doing performance-based questions can often be a little difficult if you don't have a lot of hands-on, especially for the one we just did at the beginning of our troubleshooting study group. Is I had you do trace routes and pings, and if you've never done that before, that's something that you might not be familiar with. You need some type of lab to help you out with these. One of the things that I recommend, I know that free is not necessarily fantastic to be able to use this, but one that might help you is to get your hand on an operating system that you can then run anything on, like a virtual machine. Virtual machines from Microsoft are available for free. This is something not a lot of people know. Go to modern.ie, modern.ie. It takes you to the Microsoft developer website, specifically the development site for Edge, which is their browser. But one of the things that they do is under the Tools pull-down menu, there is an option for virtual machines. There it is. So click that, and Microsoft makes available Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 all ready to go in VMs. So it's very easy to download these, run them on your desktop, and you can do anything in that virtual machine. You can ping, you can send out traffic, you can do a lot of different things, all from these virtual machines, and they're free. They're a 90-day working machine, and it's the end user licensing agreement requires that you only use them for non-production purposes. So as long as you qualify there, you can download these and use them as much as you want. You don't need a Microsoft account. You don't need to register anything. You don't have to log in. Nobody's going to call you. You don't have to give them your email. I won't bother you. I won't have, Lori's not going to call you. Mrs. Professor Messer's not going to bother. Nobody's going to bother you. You just download these and they're available. And they're free. And it's Windows. It's a full-blown Windows. So you can do anything that you would normally do in a Windows environment. You can break it. And if you break it and you haven't set any type of backup, you don't have a snapshot made, just download another one and run it again. After 90 days, when this one expires, download another one and run it again for 90 days. However long you need it to be able to use in your non-production purposes. That is a great free tool that is on modern.ie, the modern world. That's where you would go. Thoroughly modern, modern. modern.ie to have that there. So that's what I would tell you if you're looking for something that is a free tool. It's sort of difficult to perhaps maybe find free labs for things like this, but that is something that you can at least get started with some of those. May not work for what you're doing. Maybe it will. Have a look and see if that will. Another question came in from Rosemary that said, how can I tackle network-related questions? We had some of those today, those network-related questions. This is one where, especially for Network Plus, for A Plus, and for Security Plus, there's a number of network-type commands, especially in the new 601, many more utilities that you have to know. So this is a case where if you're ever in a situation like this and you're trying to figure out, what do I do to be able to get my hands on this? This is one where I think using those commands at the command line is really the secret. And if you go to my videos, every time I'm demonstrating these in my videos, you can also do exactly what I'm doing. I'm pinging public websites. The examples we did today, you can do from your desk, the same way I did it from my desk. I'm not using internal servers. I'm not doing anything specific. And if I do, I tell you that so that you have some options there. And I think if you go through each one of those commands and follow along with the videos, that would give you some ideas of things you can do. You aren't really going to break anything. So that's one of those cases where maybe that would help you as well as you go through this. Another question came in from CG. Any quick exam tips? There are no quick exam tips. There are only exam tips that take some time. There's nothing that you could wave a magic wand over and these problems on the exam will just disappear. The tips I have that are associated with the exam are tips that are kind of blocking and tackling. They're fundamentals. They're 101 type things, but they're the things that get you through the exam. And I think the biggest recommendation I have always is to get the exam objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, download the exam objectives, use those exam objectives as a way to check off as you know different topics. This is important for the 501, even more important for the 601 because there's 50% more content on the 601, 50% more objectives. It is 1.5 times the size of the 501, and the 501 was already massive. So already you've got so many objectives you need to know. You have to have something keep track of what's going on for you. The objectives should be what you use. It allows you to check off as you go so that you know you covered those particular topics. So that would be useful to have those there. See if that's something that might work for you. Maybe it would, to be able to, as not a quick exam tip, but one of those you really should use through the entire exam study process. Absolutely be familiar with those as you go through them. Let's go back to, let's go to the phone calls. Some folks are already waiting. Let's go to the 334 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Clint. I am in Huntsville, Alabama.
Hey, Clint. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. So 2 years ago, I took my Network Plus exam, and I pretty much used your content, YouTube, all that stuff, even the review stuff that you're doing right now to get mine by the skin of my teeth. I got a 726, I believe, out of 720.
Nice.
So that was great.
Good.
And as of an hour and a half ago, I got my Security Plus exam certification.
That's timely. How'd you do on the questions in the study group?
Here, I think I only missed one of them, which was the one. Yeah, I can't remember which one, but I only missed one of them.
I think you're allowed today. I think you're allowed to miss some questions today. Congratulations on your Security Plus. That is a fantastic feat, and you got in before the change to the 601 too, which may even be more important.
Yeah,
that's great. So the people that are studying,
thank you for everything that you're doing, that you've done. I think for both of the exams, I used your YouTubes. Spent a long time watching them and going over. I went over the last year of your study groups.
Oh, great! And
also using, I think, the exam cram, doing the practice exams, just kind of going over that, finding what I missed, writing them down, because that was my biggest thing, is being able to know what I missed and figure out why I missed it.
So this is one where the first, I think, number of people are interested in this as well. Is did you take it at a testing center or did you take it at home?
I did take it at a testing center, actually.
You and me are kind of in the same boat there. So I just don't like taking my exams at home, but at least you have the option to be able to do that right now. The other thing that I would ask, I think people that are watching would like to know as well, is we don't want to give anything away because you're not able to talk about the specifics on the exam. But if you had to give somebody a tip for studying for this exam, what is the tip that you would give them?
I mean, really, what I did is what I said earlier, is going over what I missed and kind of focusing my energy on what I missed, and still going over what I quote unquote know, because they can throw curveballs
Yeah.
with it.
For sure. That's one of those I tell people all the time. You not only have to know the content, you kind of have to know how they're going to ask these questions of you. It's almost half of the exam is being prepared for the exam itself. Congratulations, Clint. That is fantastic news, and best of luck with whatever's next on your certification and career agenda.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. That's a great story. We thank you for calling. I love hearing when people pass their exam. It's very motivating. Sometimes when you're stuck in this dark room creating content, you're thinking, did I make a bad decision? Is this going to do anything for anybody? And it's nice to hear there's a result from all of that work. So thank you for calling and letting us know about that. On the phones, or first in the chat room, folks talking about, do I do 501? Do I do 601? For those of you that weren't here earlier, and as I talked about it, there is a video on my YouTube channel, why you should not wait for the SY0-601. I highly recommend you take the SY0-501 as long as you possibly can. I think there's some significant advantages, and I tell you what those advantages are in that video. Let's go back to the phones. The 214 area code. Hi, caller. Oh, this is Gladys. You've called in before. Thanks for calling back.
Oh, thank you for remembering.
I appreciate that. What's your question?
Yeah, my question is the performance-based question, which I didn't really figure out what it is. The question is given to me, and you are giving an information on a table sum. It's tabulated. It's showing that like the source IP address and the destination IP, and it asks you to either allow or deny the connection and give the protocols used and everything. But it allows you to modify the source or destination IP address if you can, if desired. But in the question, it doesn't mention any IP address, or it doesn't mention the source IP and the destination IP address in the question.
Sure.
It just mentions in the table. So I want to know, is it necessary to modify those IP addresses on the table? Because you don't know where it's coming from and where it's going. So do you think I have to modify the IP addresses as well on the question, or just the rule?
Well, they obviously didn't give you the IP addresses. So the way I think you're leaning this direction, and I think it makes sense to me as well, is they're not giving you specific IP addresses. So you would not be putting specific IP addresses in there. However, the part that maybe is confusing is that there's clearly a field there for destination IP address and source IP address that is listed. So it almost seems like you should be putting something there. This is in the world of firewalling, in the world of creating these ACLs. This is an any rule, an ANY, an any rule, where you would have a rule that says any traffic sourced going to any traffic destination, apply these particular parameters to it. So if it's a situation like you described where they haven't given you IP addresses, you know what the source is, it's this machine here. You know what the destination is, it's that machine there. But they haven't given you any specifics as to their individual IP address. You don't know what IP address range they are on. You don't know what IP address subnet they're on. It just hasn't given you that information. In those particular cases, create a firewall rule or an ACL that is simply any to any. So the source IP address range would be any. The destination IP address range would be any. And then in the rest of the rule, you would create more details or more specific type of rules around the things that you do know about, so that anytime you see that situation where you're just very unsure what the IP would be, that would be an any rule. And I think if you put that, you'd be fine.
All right, great. That sounds good. Yeah. And I also have another question, please. Can you please try to differentiate, to explain what is telnet and what it's used for?
What telnet? You don't see telnet used very much anymore. You probably saw that from some of my videos as I mentioned this. Have you ever used secure shell before, SSH, to connect into a remote device across the network? Have you done that before?
No.
This is one that, let's see if I have a host that I can connect to at least give you a feel for this. I think I turned off the server that I was going to use for this. I will find one real quick while we are talking. One of the things that we often use to connect to a device that is across the network to be able to do any type of administration is we need to connect to that device on using a console, using a screen that would just be a command line screen. And that's incredibly useful to have that functionality so that we can log into that device. But that connection between you and that other machine needs to be encrypted. So we don't want anyone sitting on the network and seeing our conversation and being able to pick out my username and my password because I'm the administrator. I don't want somebody using that to log into that machine. So that's why we use SSH, which is secure shell. It allows us to securely communicate across the network and get a shell or a terminal screen into that remote device. Now, the reason we use secure shell and encrypt is so the bad guys can't see the data that we're sending. Before we used SSH, before there was an SSH, we used a program called telnet, which is telecommunications network is what that stands for, which doesn't make any sense, but that's the name of it, is telnet, which looks and feels exactly the same as SSH to the end user. So if you're using telnet to connect over to a shell on a remote device, you get a terminal screen. You're at the command prompt of that remote device and you're using it. You can use telnet to do that as well. But telnet does not encrypt anything. So if you log in with your administrator password and you send that information out using telnet, anybody in the middle who captures those packets will have your administrator username and your administrator password right in the middle. So that's why we always tell people, do not use telnet. Never use telnet. Telnet should never be something that you use on your network. You should always use SSH. And if you had to differentiate between the two, telnet not encrypted, SSH encrypted and safe. Those are the two biggest differentiations.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you. My last question will be on your list of other volatility.
Yeah,
the list you have.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't really get what is each of those points, like somehow differentiated. I always confuse when I'm trying to put them in order, like from least volatile to the most volatile. So because I don't understand what are the terms, that's why. You didn't explain clearly which terms, what means what. Maybe you can hint us on that.
Sure. We kind of talk about volatility and why it's important for somebody working in security. This is one of those situations where it becomes really useful to be able to have a familiarity with what data sticks around for any amount of time. So let's, for example, look at my list of my volatility list. This is the list from my video where I have the most volatile things at the top, the least volatile are at the bottom, which means things that stick around the longest are the least volatile. They're the least worrisome as far as gathering data because they're going to be sticking around for a while. But the things that disappear quickly are at the top of this list. And this is one of those situations where if you're ever trying to collect data, there's been an event, someone's hacked into the network, and you now need to collect forensics data, the information that's going to disappear the fastest is at the top of this list. So you want to start your collection, if at all possible, with the items that are at the top of that list. You'll have a little more time to collect temporary file systems, then disk information, then remote logging and monitoring data, and finally archival media like backup files. They're going to be sticking around for a very long time, whereas CPU registers and CPU cache aren't going to be around along very often or for very long at all. So it's really more about collecting forensics data and which forensics data you should be collecting first, which should you be collecting second, what should you be collecting third, and so on.
Okay, got that. Thank you so much for your help. That is really great. I hope I will make it by Monday because I have my exam on Monday.
Okay.
This coming Monday, yeah. So I hope I will make it because you really helped me. And right now I'm just trying to finish doing all my finishings and everything. Thank you for that.
Best of luck, Gladys. You're going to do great. Good luck on Monday.
Thank you.
That's exciting. The chat room sending you good vibes too. So that's one of those where we're all sort of going to war. We all pick that day where we're going to walk in the room or connect to that testing service. So I wish her very well with making that happen. Let's go back to the phones. It's the 412. Another caller, Kevin. Well, thanks for calling back.
Hey, Professor, how are you? Thank you for having me again.
Appreciate it. Thank you. What's your question?
Absolutely, sir. Well, I just purchased my exam voucher, so I'm halfway there whenever it comes to scheduling it. So,
I understand.
I just had I have a little bit of trouble with the asymmetric and the symmetric cryptography algorithms. Some of that stuff confuses me a little bit, so I've been trying to watch your videos, but for some reason those always get me. Like I always get confused between the two.
This is probably one of the things that gets it's one of the few things on the exam that gets a little bit easier on the 601 exam. I know this is not what you want to hear, but they get rid of that huge list of all of the different algorithms, the hashing algorithms, the blowfish, they just got rid of all those. They're just not even on the list of exam objectives anymore. So we kind of have to get through them on the 501. But fortunately for symmetric encryption, there's a lot of choices there, but for asymmetric, there's not a lot. And as I mentioned earlier in the study group, if anybody ever wanted to send me an encrypted message using PGP or GPG, using asymmetric encryption, I'm more than happy to send some emails back and forth with you so that you can get some hands-on with this, so that you can find my public key, encrypt it with my public key, send it to me, and see if I can read it now with my private key. That might be a good way to maybe solidify some of those things in your brain.
Oh, that would be great, Professor. How would I do that?
Well, the tool you probably want to use is GPG. So look for GPG, GNU Privacy Guard is the name of that tool. GPG is the one that you would install in Windows and Linux and Mac OS to be able to send these emails out. There are also ways to do this with Yahoo Mail and Gmail. It's a little more complex to do that. That's why I recommend using GPG to start with. Once you have that, you'll need to send a message to somebody. It usually will ask you to search through a public key server to be able to find my key. And you'll want to do that. The public key server for me is going to find it under my email address, which is james@professormesser.com. If you do that and find my key, I'm going to leave the rest of the task up to you. That will be your lab to be able to figure out, once you have my key, now how can you use this to send me an encrypted message?
Gotcha. And that was actually the only question that I had, Professor. I really appreciate it. I've been downloading a lot of your practice exams every morning. When I wake up, I try to do at least one of the take 10.
Nice.
So I can condition my brain. And I also study the practice exams after work every day. So I just want to say thanks. Your videos are awesome, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to continue watching until I take my exam.
You're doing all the right things. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. I can't wait to hear back to see how some of those things go. I need to add more Take 10 questions, it sounds like. Kevin used them, so I need to make sure everybody's got access to those. They are, of course, on my site at professormesser.com/take10, all one word. But I've got, I think, 4 Take 10s there. I need to add a couple more. I think that'd be fun to have those in there to figure out the details. Let's do another caller. Let's go to, you've been holding for so long, from the 714 area code. I'm going to click the talk button. We're going to see if something happens. There we go. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from California. My name is Ryan. How are you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Just want to let you know you're a legend.
I'm at least a legend on the phone. If you ask Mrs. Professor Messer, I don't know if that's the right what she would say, but we're going to go with that for now because it inflates my ego. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that.
So I'm trying to go from zero to hero here. What was it? When the Rona first started, I decided to change my career and use this time to study security.
Nice.
And first, I got attracted to doing like a boot camp, but I found out very early on it's too expensive, not good. It was about 10 grand for 24 weeks.
Right.
So I found other ways to go about doing this, and you were the very first name that kind of popped up everywhere I was looking, and I bought your $100 package, and I got your 3 tests, and I'm starting to do the last 2 weeks I've been doing the practice labs that's on your website.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going along that. I'm feeling really good. I'm getting 90s on your test now, and I'm feeling good about the test. I have it next week. My question is, once I pass this test, because I will, I want to do cloud security later, like maybe 5 years,
Sure.
and then later after that, I want to get into a CIO position. How would you recommend getting that track going? And mind you, I'm going 0 to hero, so I had zero to no computer experience.
This is, again, we all start in IT with no computer experience. So this is not an unusual thing to run into. I had zero computer experience when I kind of started into this crazy world of things. And there's nothing more fast-paced, nothing that really gets you moving higher up in this industry than finding one of these fast-moving technology fields and jumping into it. Even if you jump in it and sort of at the tail edge of it, it kind of drags you along very fast. And I think cloud-based technologies and cloud security are certainly two places that can do that. I think to be able to secure any environment, whether it's cloud-based or not cloud-based, whether it's a operating system, whether it's some type of specialized platform, whatever it happens to be, I think it's best if you have some time, you have some stick time, you have some knowledge of how that particular platform operates. So for me to be able to secure networks, I needed to have a strong foundation in networking and routing and switching before I moved into IT security and securing networks. And so that eventually got me into next generation firewalls. I think if you're interested in cloud security, then you should learn as much as you can about administering the cloud. You need to learn about how people are using it, how to automate it, how to use some of the tools that are available, how to control it, how to set permissions, how to deploy application instances, how to automate that process, how to really make a cloud-based environment dance, how to really understand it at a very core and dare I say an expert level. Because if you can become an expert or at least extremely knowledgeable in how that operates, then it's going to be that much easier to become knowledgeable in how to secure it. So if anybody in here is ever interested in IT security or cybersecurity or whatever we're calling it these days, whatever you're interested in, get a foundation of that thing. Learn as much as if you're interested in IT security, learn as much as you can about routing and switching. If you're interested in cloud security, get as much knowledge as you can about the cloud and how it operates. Because as soon as you do that, and you're working with Linux, and you're working with Windows, you're understanding Mac OS, and you're learning the cloud, and you've got the automation, and you're understanding the JSON, you're understanding the templates, and you're figuring out how to make these things interoperate, and you're setting the permissions, and you're able then to now take it to the next level and manage the security across all of those. That's the stepping stone. That gets you to that final spot. I hear people all the time say, I'm going to go learn everything I can. I'm going to go get my Security Plus. Then I'm going to go get these other 3 security certifications. And then I'm going to go get a security job. And the challenge you have is that they're not going to give you a high-level security job right out of the gate. You're going to have to work up into that. But it is a set of plateaus, your stepping stones to be able to get there. And if it's a high-paced, fast, modern set of technologies that we just don't have enough people for, like the cloud and like security in the cloud, you tend to go through those stepping stones very, very quickly because you're learning a lot in a very short period of time. And what you would, if you were working as a Microsoft administrator, what might take you 3 years there, you would learn in a year in a cloud administration role, just because those roles tend to move so much faster and being able to work through them. And it's remarkable once you get that foundational knowledge, now suddenly you have other options. In fact, I had never expected myself to become a systems engineer for next generation firewall company, but I'd worked through the years in all of these security companies. I had a foundation in workstation administration, network administration, server administration. I'd kind of worked to a point where I'd even worked with security companies like Network Associates, now McAfee Associates. Now I'd gotten to that point, and sort of out of the blue, got a call from a friend that said, hey, I'm interviewing with this next generation firewall company that's starting to build out. You should really talk to them. I think it'd be right up your alley. At that point, I had no interest in changing jobs, but the potential there was remarkable. The fact that you had the knowledge there, the fact that you've built that knowledge base of your own gives you options to go different places. And the folks that are asking in the chat room was Palo Alto Networks. It was the very beginnings of Palo Alto Networks. I was part of their initial team of hires to be able to take this technology out into the field and plug it into people's networks. So it was a great experience, but I would have never gotten there if I didn't have the foundation. So the best thing I can recommend to you, Ryan, is to go get those foundations. You're already doing it. You're already working on your certification. Get that foundation of what you want to be. Learn as much as you can about the cloud. Maybe get a job doing cloud administration. And it's remarkable how easy that next step up the stepping stones is going to be into cloud security.
All right, that sounds great.
Have a look, have a work through that.
Thank you for the advice. And
it will be surprising how fast this happens, quite honestly.
And now I'm getting my foot through the door. So
for many people, they kind of miss that part, Ryan, is you have to get your foot in the door. I've watched people and communicated with them online, and they've gotten an offer to get that initial help desk job. But they said, I'm above a help desk. I don't need to be doing simple help desk things. I'm gonna wait for a better position. And I'm thinking that's where they start you. They start you at the help desk. It's 6 months of that to see if you fit in the organization, see how much you learn, and then they figure out where to put you. I think people miss an opportunity when they do that. I think you're on exactly the right path.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, the Palo Alto Networks job was a great job. Sort of fell in my lap. They, at the time, were unknown. They weren't selling their products yet. I was part of the initial team there. I was the 95th employee in the company, and we had a blast. I worked there for 7 years, probably. That is the longest time I ever spent with any single company, and just a fantastic group of people, a fantastic product, just a ridiculous, amazing product that does what it says it does. It's so rare in this industry to find a product that actually does what they say it does. The people working there, smartest people I ever worked with in the industry, and I worked with many different Silicon Valley companies throughout my career. Just amazing. The minds in that particular company and what they are doing with their technologies. None of it is a fake thing. They are on point with their products. They are on point with what they are doing as a company. Just remarkable. And it's kind of fun. I'd never been in the experience of starting with a kind of a startup. They were a startup. They were not a public company at that time. And so being in a startup and being part of that fast-paced kind of decision-making, you get to make a lot of decisions for yourself on the road. You're working very hard hours, a lot of time, a lot of travel, but very rewarding. And that's the kind of job you want if you're ever in an industry. You want to be in a job that you enjoy, something that's different every day, something that is demanding of you from a technical perspective, demanding of you from someone who's trying to learn more about what they are doing. And boy, that's a job where you'll learn more because you're never going to learn it all. You never know enough when it comes to next generation firewalls. There's just too much to know that it's never one person. So it was a lot of fun. So the better foundation you have. I would have never been in the position to make that move had I not worked previously with security technologies. I had written a book on Nmap just for fun. It didn't sell. I was publishing it myself. Sold, a handful of them, but it didn't make a lot of money, but it was a lot of fun to do. But I was able to take that information and walk in the room and say, well, I've got all this knowledge of firewalls and antivirus and IPS and long-term packet storage and reporting and in-map scanning. And so all of these things together, they go, well, you'd probably be a good systems engineer. Let's do this. And so those are the opportunities you have to build for yourself. You have to get the foundation. You have to start somewhere. And as soon as you start somewhere, keep learning. There was somebody on Reddit this week that was asking or even saying the question, like, do you ever stop learning with this stuff? Don't you just get in and you're done? Like, you never get in and you're done. You're always learning in this particular line of work. IT is just constantly changing. You know, when I started in IT, there was no internet. There was no cloud computing. So all of these technologies that come in through the years, there was no gigabit Ethernet. There was no network switching. There was routing. There was bridging. You know, the foundations were there, but you keep building on the foundations. So you're always learning. You're always finding these new things. And next year, there's going to be a new technology of some kind. There's going to be a new set of things that people are doing. There's going to be another fast-paced technology that comes along. We now all start at the beginning with that one. So that's what kind of the cool thing about this world that we live in too, is that very often we all start at the same spot. With cloud computing, we all had to figure it out from the same spot and being able to make that happen. So maybe you can work on that too. It'd be the same spot. Let's take some questions from the chat room. Cain and Abel is obsolete these days. The URL's not even there, is it? So that's one of those cases. Any alternative? Well, it depends on what you're doing. Cain and Abel is a big utility with a lot of different options to it. So I guess it depends on what you were doing with Cain and Abel and what the options might be. I wonder if that utility is going to be available somewhere else as well. If this is for Windows, it's not one that's available for Mac OS. I guess you'd have to see on some of their the official website. Just not there anymore, is it? There's an archive site out on archive.org that might help you a little bit. But there's tons of options out there. You know, Aircrack and John the Ripper do a lot of the things that Cain and Abel did. Does Rainbow Crack do ARP poisoning? I'm trying to think about the things that do ARP poisoning. There's one I used the other day that did ARP poisoning, and I think it was a wireless utility. Might have been Aircrack that I was using to do that. So there are a number of different things. There's grab the Kali distribution. There's tons of tools there that will do ARP poisoning. It's kind of clunky sometimes to use, but once you figure it out, that's one of those things to do. Yeah, don't download these utilities now once they are not being supported, because it's going to have malware in it. It's not going to be something you want to do. To be able to work with that. Oh, the Wi-Fi Pineapple, I have seen it do ARP poisoning. That's a good recommendation from Kevin in the chat room. There's a number of different options. Check the Kali distribution for Linux. Run that on your machine. Ettercap does ARP poisoning. That'd be good. That'd be a good one to use. A lot of great functionality in that one as well. That's one of the things you also find in these security tools is there's so many security tools out there, and they all do certain things extremely well. So have a look at those. If you become an expert in any one of them, people are going to want to pick your brain and use your skills. Maybe give you some money for it, which helps too. Other questions from the chat room. When is the last date to take the SY0-501? We don't know the exact date, but it will be July of 2021. So July, 9 months from now or so, will be the last possible date to take the SY0-501, and they'll probably give us a more specific date as we get closer. Just depends on when that happens to be. As I mentioned, if you're studying right now for your Security Plus, study for the SY0-501. Do as much as you can. The second question, after passing the Security Plus exam, what is the next step in becoming an IT security technician? What is the next certification? What should you do? Really, it depends. There are certain places in this industry, certain geographies where you might be living, where there might be some security options available to you right after you get your Security Plus. For example, I would imagine in the Washington, D.C. area, there's all these federal jobs there. They all like you to have at least a Security Plus. And there's a lot of security operations center jobs, SOC SOC, Security Operations Center, which is the help desk for security. These are great entry-level jobs, and they're hiring entry-level people for these jobs. So if you are in a place where they have a Security Operations Center, a SOC, make sure that you are looking into those jobs where they're hiring entry-level, but it's a security job. I mentioned in the earlier call with Ryan, that gives you an opportunity to move up in a security role because you started in a security role. So make sure you take advantage of that. That may be a good opportunity for you to be able to make that happen. The other things you want to look at is, what are people in your area hiring for? Are they hiring particular security jobs? Is that the job you're working towards? If that is, what are they asking for? Are they asking for Security Plus and another security certification? Are they asking that you have a knowledge with a Palo Alto Networks firewall? That might be the certification you go with. Are they asking for a cloud-based computing knowledge? Well, maybe I need some cloud computing certifications. Those are the things you have to step through because everybody's geography is a little bit different. I mentioned in my video how to get a job in IT with no experience. That's on my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. How to get a job in IT with no experience, where I recommend that you make a spreadsheet, you list out all the jobs in your area that you are qualified for, and then you start filling in the spreadsheet with what they're asking for. Are they asking for formal education? What are they asking for? Are they asking for certifications? What are they asking for? Are they asking for other knowledge in the industry? What are they asking for? Have that all in a single spreadsheet, and then you can go through that spreadsheet and see if there's any places where they're correlating together. And you may find that everybody's asking for CISA Plus, or everybody's asking for another type of certification. And then you'll know what direction to go to have your best possible chance at getting one of these jobs in your particular area. I give you some other tips in that video. You may want to have a look, if you haven't already, at how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's 30 minutes long, and it is chock full of tips, steps, ideas, options to be able to have a well-rounded view of what you can do to get that IT job. It's one of those things I can't possibly tell you all of it on the study groups. That's why I did the video. And it's just a lot that's there to be able to work through. Am I going to do 50% for 501 and 50% for 601 in my monthly study groups now? My plan is next month to switch over and just do 601. We've got 3 years of 501 study groups that you could go back and reference that are all 501 content all the way through. So adding more 501 content probably does not make sense right now, even though I'm telling you, wait until July to take the 601, which is why I'm hedging a bit, because I know I need to make the jump to the 601 content, but I don't want to make the jump until people can realistically study for the 601. There's not going to be any books till January. Maybe it's better that I wait till January. So I haven't made that decision yet. In my mind, 6 months ago, I was thinking I'm going to switch over to 601 the moment the test is available. Now I'm thinking maybe that's not the best idea for anybody. Maybe we wait until more content is available, and that's when we do it. Now, of course, since the 601 itself, 50% of that content comes from the 501, I think the 601 study group will effectively be 50% 501 and 50% 601, just because statistically that's what the exam objectives are. But I don't want it to be half and half. I want it either be a 501 study group or I want it to be a 601 study group. So I haven't made that decision yet. You'll notice that in all of my study groups now, I spell out what version of the study group it happens to be. That's why I'm doing that, so that we can not only see what it is now, we can go back through the archives and see what it happens to be. And on my website, I've separated those out as well. Just another way that you could tell what should I be studying from, and you're studying from the right content as well. Before I go back to the phones, the other question is about Apple. Okay. Any comments on Apple switching to ARM processors? Yeah, I'm not even paying attention to that at the moment. For those that aren't familiar with this, Apple is going to be creating their own processors for their equipment. We did this big switch over to Intel years ago, which was great. So we can run multiple operating systems and have a lot of flexibility with tools and having an Intel platform to work on. But I guess Apple has decided having more control over the silicon gives them a competitive advantage. And so they've decided to make their own processors, which means they have to convert over their own operating system to be able to run on those processors. And ultimately, it's not going to make much of a difference to folks. If you want to run Windows, you just virtualize it anyway. So that's, boot camp is effectively a virtual system. So I don't think it's going to make much of a difference to anybody. There will be a migrational period where everybody's just angry because nothing is running properly and they have to get the right binary and it has to work on that processor. And that's just a temporary thing. Once we're through that, I think we're fine. And most of us that are using Apple are using tools that will be updated very quickly. You're using the Apple products, you're using the Adobe products, or using products that are going to be swapped out to the new binaries anyway. So I don't know that it's going to be that big for most folks. That's one of those. We'll see how it works out with that. I don't know that I'm not a big one to fight over platforms. Just sitting on my desk here, we've got Linux on my system. If you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you're on Linux. You've got Windows running from my streaming server in the back. You've got Mac OS in front of me. I don't care. You're not going to get in a fight with me because I use all of them. What should I do? I use anything you'd like. I don't care. I don't have an investment in any one of them that gives me any concern about any of that. So if it works and it works better, great. If they convert over and everything's awful, well, then I'll go back to Windows. It's great to have options, and that certainly gives us that. So we'll have to see what Apple's able to do with it. I think that what's really driving this is a lot of the work they're doing in big data and machine language or machine automation and finding ways to have the computer itself figure out what's going on around it. That's probably what's driving the most part of that. We'll see if that really helps. We'll see if it really drives them. It certainly is on the phone side. So why wouldn't it drive it on the desktop side as well? We'll find out. Back to the phones, the 410 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is John, calling from Texas.
Hey, John. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I heard you were talking about Apple. On a more security note, how much do you know about the T2 chip?
Not a whole lot at the detailed level because I never have to work with it or program to it or do anything with it. Is there something specific you were interested in regarding that?
Yeah, let's say, because I follow a model. I don't know if you know about the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet levels, like the relationship. But I treat security like an onion, and I keep the stuff I'm least worried about being compromised at the top unencrypted, and the encryption gets stronger. I don't know if you advocate for that type of security model.
That's the one we sort of find ourselves in almost every scenario. Certainly when you think about security in the cloud, it's considered to be that way. We're so concerned about encryption and keeping our data private, especially when we're putting on cloud servers. That's sort of the direction the cloud goes as well.
Okay, what about if you put it in an encrypted folder, and Mac, you can actually use this utility to make a DMG file. That's basically a folder. You can put a password on it. Do you find any sort of concerns or worries about doing it that way if there, someone forbid there was a data breach?
Are you saying that, am I concerned about it being in an encrypted form, or am I concerned about not having it in that encrypted form?
Yeah, if you were to have it encrypted and like that, putting your own precautions before transferring it to the cloud versus not doing it and letting the cloud take care of all the security?
Yeah, for example, I use the C2 cloud. I have a Synology box, and I have all of my videos that I produce. I use that as a staging server. I take all of the videos, the raw video, and I store it there. I don't care about that being encrypted because ultimately those videos are going to be public anyway. But on that same Synology server are all of my private pictures. I don't mean private pictures. I mean my family pictures, my family vacations, everything a picture I ever take on my digital camera, pictures outside, pictures of Disney World, pictures of my kids, pictures of animals. They're all stored through the years on that Synology NAS that's in my studio. And that is incredibly valuable to me and becomes increasingly invaluable every day. So I want to be sure I'm storing that and backing up that information, but I don't necessarily want you to be able to see my pictures, John. So I want to store them in the cloud. So I'm using Synology C2 product, which will automatically archive them on the Synology servers so that they're backed up, but it encrypts them locally first and then puts them there. I'm comfortable with doing that. I don't know how comfortable I would be if I was uploading them to the C2 and they were encrypting them on the cloud. I prefer encrypting them here locally.
I'm because I'm more concerned about also encrypting my own data. For example, if I had some pictures like of public things that that basically scream, I have nothing to hide. You can have this information if you want, but and it like go up into security as the layers get deeper and deeper, like 128-bit AES for something a little more private, but you're not but it's not worth making it like top secret and 256 or higher for the most top secret. You don't want anyone to get their hands on it for any reason. I wouldn't know if you would agree with that sort of model like that.
I do. You know, I'm putting together the 601 Security Plus course right now, and it does go deeper into kind of the thought process. Instead of it focusing on encryption protocols, it really does spend a lot of time talking about philosophies of encryption and where to do it and how to implement it. And of course, brings up the option of once we've all spent all this time going through asymmetric encryption, building out these very secure encryption methodologies that would take until the lifetime of the universe to be able to brute force. And then, of course, you throw quantum computing on top of that. And if that ever catches on, all of that technology that we spent all that time working and making very, very secure now becomes a lot less secure, if not secure at all. And we kind of have to start this whole encryption process over again. So it's the never-ending process of analyzing, putting a process in, performing the process, and then realizing later it's not good enough.
It's a never-ending arms race.
Well, and I think that's what makes it fun. I think that's also what makes us in the security world valuable skills, because we're trying to keep up with that arms race and go faster than the bad guys. And it's fun. It's something always to learn, and employers are happy to pay us for those skills. So that's a win-win in my book.
Or you could be like one of those at DEF CON that tries to actually break into something that I guess developers think is secure, but may actually have a lot of security flaws that can be exploited. I don't know if encryption ever had any of those issues, especially with AES or RSA.
There's always a situation like that. I'll never forget the CanSec West I went to, where they were able to break into the Mac in a very short period of time. And you break into the Mac, you get to take it home, and you got to pick up that MacBook Pro and take it home with him because he was able to get an exploit into Safari.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not a bad set of skills for him.
Wait, was this pre or post? Was this before or after the C2 chip came out?
Oh, I think this was well before. I was teaching an MMAP course at CanSec West in Vancouver. This had to be prior to Palo, so you're talking more than 10 years ago at this point.
Ooh, so that was way before the T2. But I'm sure it was a lot harder with that T2 chip.
Yeah, I would imagine so, which kind of speaks to the reason that Apple's spending all this time on finding other ways to secure these technologies so that you can't get into them. And the governments are catching on. You've got just this past week, the U.S. federal government has said, wait a second, where's the back door into these phones that we wanted? And of course, all the security professionals are saying, you don't get a back door because the moment you make a back door, it's worthless. So we're not going to make a back door. So you're going to continue to have that fight back and forth with powers that be and security professionals to figure out what is going to be the balancing act here.
Okay. So do you know about how secure it is? Like, if, for example, I don't know if you know about the newest Mac Pro that everyone calls the cheese grater, how it uses the flash card SSDs. If you were to remove those, that basically becomes useless, and any data on there is no longer accessible.
Some people will tell you that's a horrible idea, and I think about it as that's a great idea. That's exactly the kind of security I'd be hoping for. That's whenever you start getting into those things, it really does make you think, is there a point where we have gone too far with it? Is it too secure? Do we need more control over how much security is there? Or should we allow the manufacturers to build in this security, even though we can't really control it that well? I think there's advantages and disadvantages both ways. I'd love to get my hands on a Mac Pro and see it for myself. I just don't have, $30,000 to spend on it.
Well, I went to an Apple store this past weekend. I almost got in, except I had to have an appointment, and if I had one, I would have beelined straight to the Mac Pro to see what it's all about for myself firsthand, to see if it's really what it cracked up to be. Trust me, I've been having my eye on that for the longest time, ever since it came out and was the 8 terabyte option. That's the computer I would want for the Mac side. That speaks nothing for the PC side, because I want to have the best of both worlds, especially since Apple is moving away from Intel and into their own chips. It's going to be quite tricky for Windows to run made natively without virtualization.
Every once in a while, I do go out to the Apple website and I spec out a Mac Pro. I said 30, but I'm looking at the Mac Pro. You can look over my shoulder. And the last one I spec'd out was only $10,299, relatively a bare bones configuration. So I should work harder to get that. I guess with the Visa mount, 11,100, put taxes in there. That's what I'm looking at too. But you see it's still sitting in my bag and probably will continue to sit there.
Oh yeah, until the money becomes available to buy it. I would if I got my hands on quite a bit of money, that would be one of the first things I would buy. Aside from a new Tesla, but
it's a great platform, and I think they're doing the right thing with the iMac Pro, the Mac Pro. That was the iMac Pro, the Mac Pro too. I've got another Mac Pro in my bag as well to pull that out. And the Mac Pro I think ended up being about 15 to 20,000. So both of those I think are good choices. I think it's a good platform, and I'm sort of in the same boat with you. I appreciate the call, John. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
That's always interesting to me too. You know, some of the things he was mentioning earlier about the T2 chip and the security that Apple's put in, these are ongoing things the manufacturers are putting into these technologies to make things more secure. And the design of them is fascinating. It's more on the computer science side of things rather than the IT side. But what an interesting set of technologies and what they are doing with security. It will be interesting to see what they do on the Macs with their own chipset once they finally get that going. Back to the phones, let's go have a look at the 706 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Tyler. I'm from Georgia.
Hey, Tyler. What can we do for you?
Yes, I was calling. I graduated with an associate degree in cybersecurity last year, and I became a little unmotivated because I didn't know I was unable to obtain a job without a certification. So I'm just trying to figure out what route should I go. I know I need to study. Right now I'm studying for the Security Plus, but I don't know what job I should apply for after I pass the exam.
It's one of those where you almost need to kind of reverse that around a little bit. You're in a particularly good area for technology jobs. There's some relatively big organizations there that you might be able to talk with and get in on. But now's the time when you need to create that spreadsheet I mentioned earlier. Go out to your favorite job posting website, the dice.com, LinkedIn, Indeed. Find the ones that kind of fit for what people are using in your area and start trying to figure out what they're asking for. If they're asking for Security Plus, then that's obviously what you want to focus on. Some might be asking for A Plus. They might be asking for Network Plus. They might be asking for CCNA. I don't know. If you lived in Austin, Texas, and you wanted to work with Rackspace, they would probably want you to have a Linux certification. So it really depends on where you are in the world and what people are looking for. If you're in the DC area, then they absolutely want Security Plus. I don't know what they would be asking for in Augusta. So that's one of those things where you would want to kind of figure out what is the mood, what is the underlying buzz that people are looking for in your particular area. That might help you with direction a little bit. So once you get Security Plus done, and that's now on your list, have you now covered everything? Or are there other things that people would like to have? You may find that everybody's asking for Amazon certifications, or everybody would like you to have an Azure certification. You just don't know until you start looking around at the employers in your area. And that might give you a better direction of things you can think about and work towards as you're trying to get that entry-level position.
Okay. Well, thanks for the advice, and I really enjoy your videos, and keep being great.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate the call. That's one of those where you really do have to do ongoing recon. It's not a one-time thing. You make these spreadsheets, you fill all of that in, then wait about a month, go do it again. Have things changed? Are there new jobs available? Did some of the jobs disappear? You need to track these. Are certain employers hiring more people more often? Do you see certain employers are only putting a job posting in every 6 months? Those are important things to know about so you can get a feel for how often some of these things rotate around. Maybe that would help you too as you're trying to get the right job and figuring out the details of what you want to do. Those are good things to take into a possible job interview. So you can talk to them about, I notice you guys hire a lot of people all the time. There's always a job posting. Tell me about how things work. Are you moving people out of the help desk and into other parts of the organization? Are you growing the help desk? Is the company overall growing? What's driving all the growth? Or you can talk about, you only hire somebody once every 6 months. Is that usually where you would see people move out of the help desk and into a desktop or server management role? Those are good things to talk about. And of course, it lets the employer know you have been watching what they're doing. You are interested in this job. You are interested in knowing more about the way they work, and you're interested in moving up. You want to continue to grow in this field. Employers would like to know that once you start working there, that you would like to continue working there and doing more things there, and you would be a good candidate for something like that in the future. It never hurts to start talking about that the moment you get in the door. You're not even hired yet, and you're already talking about what your next job is going to be in that company. That's a good way to be thought about whenever you work through those. That's one of the big challenges I always found during the interview process is having that perspective, giving off that particular perspective to the employer, letting them know you're not only interested in this job, you want to be able to move up and learn more in the role. And I think that most people who work with technology folks know that there's a certain point where sometimes people aren't interested in learning anymore. And I've never experienced that myself because I've always just constantly been learning this content. I think the more you know, the more you learn, especially the more you learn about very niche things. Maybe you focus on cloud. Maybe you focus on Linux. Maybe you focus on databases. Whatever it is, the more you know about that thing, the more valuable you're going to be. So that's what I would recommend to all of you. Get in the door, get that help desk position, get that security SOC position, get in there and become a sponge and just learn as much as you can about all of those details. It's going to help you when you start moving up from one step to the next step to the next step. And sometimes those steps happen very, very quickly. Well, that covers our after show today. Thank you for your calls. Thank you for your questions from the chat room. Thank you for your questions throughout the month. We always appreciate you being here for that first hour of Q&A, and it's nice to hang out and just talk about technology in the second hour as well. We do one of these every month. Make sure you check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar so you know exactly when the next one is going to be. I know we had a rescheduling for this one. I sure appreciate everybody showing up, even though I had to move things up a day. I really do appreciate that as well. We'll see you next month for the next Security Plus study group. Thanks for being here this time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.